Hello, this is Arielle from Inconspicuous Bear, and I'll be narrating the Heroic Brackenspore encounter from the Highmaul raid in the Warlords of Draenor from a Guardian point of view. While this video is the heroic version of the encounter, all the mechanics are exactly the same in normal mode. Everything is just less damage, less health, less outgoing damage, all that sort of thing. So all of the mechanics and strategies that I described to handle them in this video will also apply to the normal mode version of the encounter. A word of warning when doing Brackenspore as a tank: if you're approaching this encounter with very little gear, say between 640, around 640-ish item level, you'll be experiencing some serious tank damage, so be prepared for that and have your healers be prepared accordingly. This encounter is incredibly dangerous to tanks on all difficulties, most notably on Heroic and Mythic if undergeared, so be prepared and plan and act accordingly. In this encounter, unlike the previous ones, positioning is incredibly important. Throughout the encounter, creeping moss will be creeping across the ground, growing across the ground, and being handled by two raid members who will be using flamethrowers to kill it. However, if either the ad or the boss touches the moss, they will be healing for 2% of their HP per second, which is really, really, really bad. And if any player touches the moss, they will take around 35k nature damage every second and be slowed. So you need to position the boss so that nobody is in the moss, neither you nor the raid. And there are other positioning mechanics that are required throughout this fight. There will be mushrooms that grow out of the ground, green and blue ones. Your raid will be dictating which one to go to at any given point, so make sure that you're moving the boss towards the mushroom without dragging him through moss, or, raising objections. If the mushroom's a moss, well, you obviously don't want to go stand there, because that would be bad, and that sort of thing. So positioning in this fight is very key, because the mushrooms have a short range on their effects. So make sure you're communicating with the rest of your raid what the boss is going to be doing, and when you're transitioning from point to point for each mushroom. The second boss mechanic that is the primary cause of pretty much every tank death in this encounter is narcotic breath. He will basically breathe on you for some nature damage, but the big deal here is that he reduces all healing that you receive by 99% until the breath is over. Now the kicker is that he continues to melee during the breath, so you need to make sure that Pulverize not only is Pulverize up, but you have active mitigation up as well, and it's a good time to use a cooldown. This is a good place to glyph Survival Instincts, so you can have it up for at least the last half of the breath, and make sure that the damage you're taking is reduced significantly. This can be glyphing Survival Instincts will handle the first 6 breaths on its own. Basically, it happens every 32 seconds, pretty much, which means it will happen once to each tank every 32 seconds, because you'll be swapping by the next mechanic I'll describe. So, glyphing Survival Instincts will carry you through the first 6 of those, and then you'll need to be have an external for the 7th or something, and by that time you'll be resetting your Survival Instincts and be able to get to go for the rest of the should be good to go for the rest of the fight. Otherwise, if you choose not to glyph Survival Instincts, when you have enough gear, a bark skin and pulverize should be enough to get you through it. Just make sure that your healers are aware that you could be taking massive damage during the breath, and to get you up after the breath is over, and not to expend heals during the breath, because they won't do anything. The next mechanic is a simple taunt swap mechanic called Rot. Basically, you get a stack of this debuff that causes nature damage every second, and it stacks. You'll usually end up swapping around 4 stacks or so, but the actual number is whenever Rot falls off the person who's going to be tanking the boss next. Very simple, very easy to handle. Finally, there will be a large moss monster shambler thingy ad that spawns. It has 2 abilities, basically. The first is something called Flesh Eater. Basically, it's a buff that it gains every time it does something. It uses a special attack on you, which increases the damage it deals and its attack speed and all that sort of stuff. The intent of this is to make it harder to interrupt Decay, which is a raid ride AoE that it'll cast every so often. Basically, you just tank the ad on top of the boss. I usually interrupt the first Decay because it's really easy to do so, instead of having to ask a melee to run all the way out there and do it themselves. So I'll run out there, grab the ad, interrupt the first Decay, and then drag it back over on top of the boss, where the melee will take over interrupting, and you just have to tank it until you're ready to swap back to Brackenspore. Just remember that you really don't want to be tanking both of these at the same time, so make sure you're communicating well with your co-tank so that you both swap at the same time, instead of just someone taunting the other target and then expecting the other tank to pick up on the fact that you taunted their target so you can take the other... You get what I'm saying here. So communication is key on the swap. For talents, you're going to go ahead and stick with your, the default 4 talents, Scenario Ward, Soul of the Forest, Dream of Cenarius, and Pulverize. The tier 15 talent, you could go with it. Well, don't take Displacer Beast, but you can go with either Charge or Feline Swiftness. There's nothing wrong with either of those choices. The other 2 tiers do exactly nothing on this encounter, so don't even bother picking them. But these are your main 4. In terms of special things Guardians can do, Stampeding Roar is extremely useful for transitioning from one mushroom to another, so make sure you have that available when needed. So obviously you glyph Stampeding Roar, but why would you not glyph Stampeding Roar? There are exactly 0 reasons to take that glyph route, so always a glyph Stampeding Roar. Other than that, I've already talked about glyphing Survival Instincts. Glyphing Maul can also be extremely useful too, because it's a little bit of cleave damage, but every little bit of cleave damage helps, since there will almost always be 2 targets up. And the last thing you can do, you can if you want, doesn't really matter that much, but there are these little ads that pop up called Spore Shooters that launch a projectile, which goes towards someone, and then it either hits that person and explodes, or hits something before that person and explodes. So you can intercept those projectiles if you want, and there's nothing else going on. Something you can do, something you cannot do, totally up to you and your raid. But if the ad's down and there's no reason for you to be taunting the boss, then might as well do something productive. Hope you've enjoyed this video, and good luck on Brackenspore.